Tom, welcome to B2B Content Strategist. It's great to have you on the show.
Thank you very much for having me.
Really looking forward to this conversation. So to get started, Tom, just in summary, could you explain a bit about what Adverity does and your role in it all as well, please? That would be great.
Sure. So Adverity is the fully integrated data platform for integrating and enhancing and enriching data and data governance, effectively bringing all your business data, marketing, sales data into one place from various different platforms, and then allowing businesses to analyze that more easily to help drive their data-driven strategy.
Cool. And what does a typical business look like that would be using the platform?
We scale. We cater for all different sizes, right? So, your big enterprise companies, clients like IKEA and so forth, right down to much smaller companies who still require it. So smaller B2B companies who still require that. Anybody who's spending a significant amount of money on sort of ad spend and their marketing activities, who need to get a holistic view over all of their activities and understand what's performing and what's not, because it's quite difficult in this day and age with so many different data sources you have. We've been talking about big data for 20 years, right? But it's now become so there's so much data out there, and it's all in different formats, and it's very hard to get it all in one place. So to create that single source of truth over your entire business performance is becoming increasingly more and more difficult. And so that's the major challenge that our platform solves.
Yeah, makes sense. And for you, so your role and what does your team look like? Like how many people, what kind of roles do you have in the marketing team?
So that's interesting because we're a scale-up company, and the few years that I've been here, we've grown very, very rapidly. So my role has changed quite a lot. And when I started content and comms, so I lead the content and comms team. When I started, that meant quite a lot of things. So content could mean a lot of things in a lot of companies, but that meant websites and blogs and various different external marketing activities and our communication strategy, and but also internal stuff. So developing out the brand and design for helping build sales decks and templates for presentations and everything you can think of that a business needs to have in terms of content. And as we've grown and scaled, my team's become much more specialized. So, which makes sense because we couldn't keep doing all of these things. I mean, I started and there was just 3 of us on the team, and then we grew a bit, and then we moved certain responsibilities over. We've now got a full-time website manager. We've got web developers. And so my team has become much more focused on the content marketing side of things. I mean, we're still involved in the various other aspects of the business, but that's where for this year, certainly, we need to be much more focused on as we grow.
Yeah, and I notice it says on your LinkedIn about as you're responsible for, the social channels, messaging, PR, comms, and looking at Adverity, you guys have got a very, strong presence on LinkedIn. You're on YouTube, you're on Twitter, your blog gets updated regularly. I know there's been a discussion about launching a podcast, and you and I met at Digital Marketing World Forum. So obviously you get involved in events as well. So I'd love to know, in terms of your overarching content strategy, what are your current priorities as you, I say head into 2023, we're well into 2023, but what are your main content strategies for this year?
Yeah, I mean, it's scary. We're already halfway through Q1, aren't we?
Exactly.
As we were saying before, we've just undertaken a huge rebrand.
Yeah.
So it's a really interesting time for us to talk about that strategy. And for anybody who's ever done a rebrand, you'll know it's both fun and exciting, but also an enormous headache. So we're just coming off the back of that. And that's been a sort of 6-month project, which is actually quite quick. The turnaround time is quite quick for that. So at the moment, the part of the strategy is just reinforcing that brand out there, making sure it's out there, making sure that everything has been updated that should be updated. But in general, if we look at 2023, and I think this is the same for a lot of companies, there's a big focus on efficiency. A lot of people are talking about this not just in content because, this looming prospect of recession, and we need to be able to do more with what we have, or even slightly less. So that's a key thing. When we met at DMWF, you were talking to me a lot about that video first approach, which is a wonderful approach, and certainly ticks that box for efficiency, because you can generate multiple pieces of collateral from that initial video. And that also ticks that box of finding those right audience as well. So it's that sort of democratization of our data, I suppose, is the best way to do it. To throw a buzzword at you, I'm afraid. Sorry.
Okay.
But being able to find all those different audiences and the different ways that they consume content. I mean, there's so much stuff out there, and you don't always know where your customers are. And so by being able to present that opportunity to listen to somebody, for somebody who likes to listen to things, somebody who wants to watch video. I personally, I'm a reader. I like to read things, so I want to see written form. But if you only focus on one, then you're always going to miss these other opportunities you have. So that's another key area that we're bringing into our strategy for this year. And lastly, I suppose another sort of area, and it's always been something key for us, kind of put on hold because of the rebrand, as everything gets put on hold during a rebrand, is educational content. It's really key for us, and the reason for that is one, we generally want to educate people, and we want to have really good, valuable content for people to use. But secondly, because I think the industry that we're in, it's still sort of burgeoning. There's a lot of things that people don't necessarily understand, and they need to learn more and understand more about data, how it's integrated, what the value is, and the concepts behind analytics as well. So it's really key for us to be able to educate our audience so they understand the value of our product as well.
And you mentioned, when I was asking who are your clients, obviously you mentioned it's really quite a broad range of clients, from huge companies. You mentioned IKEA to smaller. So do you take a campaign focus when it comes to your content campaigns in terms of different ICP, like different ideal clients, and sort of following different routes for different target audiences?
Yeah, absolutely. So again, that's a project rebrand. Part of that, to not just changing the colours and the logo. It's having a rethink about how you're positioned as a company, and one of those things is looking at our ideal audiences and our ideal customers, and understanding those better. So certainly we've identified a few there, and new ones that we didn't really identify before. And part of those is more technically mature or technically knowledgeable customer base, which is another interesting area to get into. We're fortunate that throughout the company we've got a lot of really smart people work here, and they're always willing to help. So being able to get their thoughts out and put that into the content that we generate, that really hits that more technical audience, I think. That's a sort of key aspect to what we want to do in 2023. Broaden what we were doing before, more specialized for those particular, as you say, ICPs.
Yeah. And in terms of, obviously there's a lot going on, I guess, with the rebrand and everything, as well as just day-to-day and recurring processes that you have. Is there anything that you and your team do to really try and streamline and optimize some of those more day-to-day and recurring processes?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked this, actually, because it's something that's really key to me. Is I'm a big believer in what I call the putting chaos in boxes approach. I feel like, in any company, especially a scale up, and as we talk about content, there's a lot of sort of creativity behind it. There's also quite a lot of chaos in terms of ideas and things going on. So I'm a stickler for really good folder systems, really good naming conventions, having processes written down, because processes are a major one, because you can have an initiative, you want to have an idea, but if you want to scale that and then start doing it bigger and more and increasing it, you can't do that without a process, setting out, what are the steps at this stage? What do you need to do? What are your channels? Who's responsible for what? And even just sort of simple things like when recording a video, you need to set these sort of parameters on the resolution that you want and so forth. So yeah, that's generally sort of my approach to doing those things, trying to do it systematically. So again, you can scale much more simply, and then look back over things as well and see what the process was and where it's gone wrong. So I think that's sort of really key to me, key for me and having things like a good digital asset management system as well, a DAM system, which I always love saying, DAM system.
The damn system.
But yeah, sort of it's being that sort of, having that systematic approach to sort of keep things aligned. And it's fine to have a bit of chaos. You're always going to have a bit of chaos in it, but if you can put it into those boxes and keep things sort of structured, and certainly having content buckets as well as another important aspect. It's quite a broad sort of spectrum of topics that you want to talk about. So if you can find a way to put them into specific buckets, you can then identify as well where you have holes in that bucket. So if you think of your content as the different pieces of content down a funnel, you're going to have all this sort of stuff at the awareness stage, with the consideration decision, all different types of collateral. If you put your content into those buckets, you can see, okay, which bucket's where I'm missing things. Where's my customer journey broken with the content that I have? So you can identify what's a priority to then really, really work on. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It really does make sense. And what you were saying about the sort of organizing the chaos and file conventions, folders, systems, processes. You and I are exactly the same. I'm exactly the same. I'm very, very, very particular about trying to bring order to anything. And also, I just completely agree with you that if you want to repeat success with something and also avoid any failure, you have to draw up the process and document it and down to
Yeah.
the finer details and things like that. So no, I completely I'm aligned with you on that. Have you guys started to do much with AI in your content marketing, content creation space?
Not here. I mean, as a company, we provide. AI is involved in more
Yes.
service offering, but no, in our
Yeah.
content. I mean, it's interesting because I suppose the big thing is ChatGPT, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Yeah,
everyone's talking about
which
that.
I'm not against. I'm not against. A lot of people, I think, are sort of really scared of this. I'm certainly not scared of it at all. It's fascinatingly interesting. And we are talking about how we can best bring that into our processes, because it's a time saver at the end of the day. I mean, that's what technology is supposed to be. Why did we invent washing machines? Well, because it took too long to wash clothes, and so now we've
Exactly.
saved time. And I feel people are really they're scared by it, intimidated by it. It's going to take our jobs. A friend of mine was messaging me about it and said, I've been on there and I think it's terrible. I asked it to write me an opening scene of a Samuel Beckett play, or in the
Oh my
style of Samuel
goodness.
Beckett. And he said it did, and it was rubbish. And I thought, yeah, but it understood the question, right? That's sort of, better than 95% of the population. And
Yeah.
so, and I think there's definitely things that could be used there and utilised. And it's something on our roadmap, but not something we've really done as of yet.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it's largely dependent on the quality that you put in as to the quality that comes out, isn't it?
Yeah, and you're always going
Finding
to have
that.
to check it anyway.
Exactly. Yeah. But it can, if it can save you a bit of time and give you a little bit of a leg up from where you were before, then it has its place, doesn't it?
Yeah. And I think, moving beyond sort of content creation, but the sort of operations and management side to things. If you look at I think it's Scott Brinker or somebody like that, he was talking about how you look at these sort of plethora of tools and over the past sort of 10, 15 years as well, what it means is there's so much more content being generated by companies. So one, that puts an emphasis on obviously making your content as good as possible, as better, so it stands out. But two, from a content management point of view, even if you just say you have perfect content being generated all the time by an AI, you still need to manage that. You still need to understand where it goes. You need to understand distribution. You need to look at, the data behind it, what's performing, what's not. So there is still a huge role for human beings for the time being, fingers crossed. So I would urge people not to be too terrified by it.
Yeah, I agree. In terms of people doing things for you instead of AI, looking a bit more now at outsourced providers and suppliers. So as you're heading up content and communications at Adverity, what kind of things do you look to outsource and work with expertise and external partners versus keep in-house for that side of
Yeah, I mean, I suppose
things?
there's two sides to that. The one is where you've got small teams, you've got limited resources, you're going to outsource at the end, to sort of freelancers, the stuff that's kind of at the lower end of the spectrum, that's a bit more routine, that can be repeated, but don't really want to do internally, but you don't have the time
Yeah,
to sort of put things out there. And then it's going to be at the other end of the scale where you don't have that expertise to do it,
yeah,
you want to go and film an advert and you know, want extremely high quality in house, you're rarely going to have those sorts of expertise, or you know, working with various agencies, SEO agencies, things like that, or website development, things like that. So for me, it's either the
Yeah.
one on the other end of that scale. Everything in the middle is what we want to try and achieve ourselves.
What kind of red flags do you see when you're having discussions with those higher end of the scale? So where it really is, plugging a skills gap. So working with real experts and looking to form, partnerships with those suppliers of that expertise. Are there any red flags that would cause you to think this is just not going to be a right fit, a good partnership?
Cost.
Yeah.
That's the big one, right? I think those red flags probably come internally first. I mean, for me, it'd be a red flag if you're, I mean, it's fine to sort of test things, but if you're going to a vendor with not really sure what you want to achieve from it, and you don't really have any data to back up why you want to do this in the first place, um, that for me is a red flag. I think, you know, if you're going to spend that sort of money and resources on having, you know, an expert and a specialized agency work on something, you need to understand exactly what you wanting to get out of this. What does success look like? How are we doing this? I don't think, certainly in today's sort of economic environment, companies can afford to be testing new content initiatives by spending those sorts of resources. I think they need to. Certainly for us, it's knowing exactly what we want to do. We have an idea that this works and it impacts the positive impact upon our bottom line. So before we even think about taking that out to a third party vendor, I think that would be my big red flag.
Yeah.
Basically, sort of throwing money at something without really.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So it's kind of as much a really an internal red flag of why are we doing this as opposed to something that the supplier, that like something that the vendor's giving off to you in terms of like they don't seem like the right people. Bit of a mixture
Yeah.
of both, really, I guess.
Well, I say also the right agency. I know I worked agency side years ago as well. You know that, and I feel like, you know, when I was working on that side, that would be the sort of thing I'd be saying back to clients as well.
Yes.
You know, we want to take the project because we want all your money, but
Yeah.
but I don't think we should. It would be dishonest for us to do so because we feel like you need to answer these questions first, so that you're going to get the most out of it. And so I think when you talk to agencies who have that mindset as well, that sort of reinforces that sort of sense of honesty, and I think that's important. I think, you know, another red flag would be someone who doesn't say something like that and then just is just happy to take your money without
Yeah.
really wanting to contribute to your company and your company's growth and the goals that you have. So I think the first question I'd like to hear from agents is, okay, what are you trying to achieve? What are your actual goals? So, because then they're on, you know, you've realized that they're on board, they want to achieve those goals too for you.
Yeah. I 100% agree. And when you do have an interaction with an agency and they come to the conclusion that it's not right for you, but because they've decided that you aren't ready yet and that there's certain steps that need to be taken. Personally, I always have massive respect for that. And then I'll usually go and take the steps that they recommend and come back to them because, you've already realized that they're honest and they want success for you and them. And they're not just going to take your money just because you're there. So it always, it strengthens the relationship overall with that honesty, doesn't it? So I completely agree with you on that.
Yeah, I think honesty is the key word there
It
as well.
is. Yeah, it is, isn't it?
Transparency, honesty. You're not. I wouldn't feel I was doing my job properly if there are certain things that I didn't say back to.
Yeah, I agree. Let's talk about one of your best content marketing initiatives. So I'd love to know, I guess, best is a strong word, but a real like standout content marketing initiative. And, why did it stand out to you as being something that's always going to be memorable that you've worked on?
We've done a few things. I think the one that's been the most interesting to work on and delivered, you know, the most in terms of just sort of one project. And it's going to sound very boring, I think, but for me it wasn't. Is the research projects that we work on. Putting out full research reports into certain areas, and that's actually done. It's been really interesting for us, but it's also performed very well. So from brand awareness, as a scale up, we wanted to generate more brand awareness. So that certainly ticked that box. And suddenly we're creating big thought leadership topics that are now being talked about in the industry. Some key people in the industry are talking about, and we're getting recognition and notoriety around that. But it also, by doing that, gave us a lot more insights into our own customers as well, and understanding the industry. So those are sorts of pieces of content that we could pass on to not just our sales team, but our product team. This is genuinely good, very interesting feedback, which then sparks initiatives in the other parts of the company as well. So it's that efficiency. It's trying to kill as many birds with one stone, and that's why I kind of liked it. It was really interesting working. I come from a background of writing reports anyway, and I like data and making graphs and really nice sort of some cool graphs and digging into the data. But then having that extra sort of part of it as well. So we're not just sort of ticking that box around brand awareness. We're also helping the company in other ways with the information we're finding. It doesn't sound so exciting. I'm sure people are watching this going, "That's a research report. That's not," but they are. Research reports are fun. I like them. They and delving into data and trying to understand things a bit better is very, very. It's always core to our company, obviously, but core to what we do as well.
Yeah. And there's just so much that can come from that independent original research as well, like you said. So, it's kind of the gift that keeps on giving if you have all of that information. So it
Oh,
definitely
yeah.
positions you as that leader that you look to be positioned as.
Absolutely, and it still keeps coming up.
Yeah.
The first one was now a couple of years ago, I think, and it's still get lots of backlinks. Still have articles that talk about it. It's still being used by our sales team as some of these sort of data points to talk to prospects about and say, does this sound familiar to you? These sorts of percentages. It as you say, the gift that keeps on giving. It's there, and it doesn't have to be a huge outlay. It doesn't have to cost a huge amount. You can really sort of focus it on what you want. And I'd say, it's a really good thing for people to try and companies to try, especially, of the same situation that Adverity at, where big and growing, there's a lot of growth, but you need that brand awareness and you want that recognition, and you want to be, as we are, that sort of thought leader within the space.
Yeah. 100% agree with you. What about any tales of what not to do? So do you have any cautionary content marketing tales or stories of something, a campaign that perhaps, or a marketing technique that perhaps didn't go
Yeah,
go
loads.
as expected?
Well, I'd go back to that whole putting chaos in boxes thing. Having a good system, folders and naming conventions, and a proper digital asset management system. That's kind of one of the big ones. I think also, if you're in that position where I've been in, it's that startup scale-up environment, and content is literally everything across the company. Don't panic. That's another sort of, don't do that, because it's easy to be overwhelmed. Take things systematically, prioritize what you're doing. So yeah, I mean, lots of things in my career, brilliant ideas we've had, and we put all this energy into it, and in the end, it just didn't work, or it got deprioritized for other things. And I could think of 100 sort of, video campaigns we wanted to do, and we did one, and then it didn't really work, and so we forgot about it. And I suppose my advice to that is don't get disheartened. Keep your ideas. I would also say one thing is it's that transition from having a really great idea, "Hey, wouldn't this be brilliant?" in a meeting, don't just write it down. Just because I think often that happens.
Yeah.
People are very creative and everybody talks about this wonderful idea, but in your business as usual, you never manage to fit it in. And so I would say, make sure not to let those good ideas go.
Yeah.
Do give them a try. Do test things. Don't be afraid of failure. I've failed loads of times. It's not fun, but then at least and then next time you do it, in a couple of years, you know a little bit about the challenges that are going to face you, and there's that.
Yeah, no,
I don't really want to dwell too much on my failure.
it's absolutely great advice, and really, really good. So 3 quick fire questions now. The first one is, do you have a takeaway tip that you would give other content marketers like yourself who are looking to really optimize content output?
Data. You've got to look at the data. There's an obvious one, right? Yeah.
No, yeah, it's a good one.
Yeah, I mean, and not just, there's a lot of, vanity metrics out there. There are also quite basic sort of data points that you can take, especially look at content, but you need to go beyond views or impressions or engagement rates and things, but really understand. I mean, for us, it's about understanding how those different campaigns and different collateral that we create actually contributes to the bottom line. And it's quite hard to do, right? It's quite hard to understand that journey. Like, how do you measure brand awareness? I mean, there's ways of doing it. You can look at branded search. You can try and understand the organic traffic coming from particular places, from owned media or different sort of channels that you work on. But it's never going to be perfect. But if you try and build that out and understand it, see what's happening when people come into your ecosphere, into your website, because they've read a blog, what are they doing next? And a conversion point, this is sort of thing that I say, a conversion point doesn't have to be, oh, we've won a client. Actually, there's lots of conversion points along that road. And a conversion point could be something just as they were on your blog and then they've gone somewhere else on the website. That's a conversion, right? You've achieved something, you've kept them there, but where are they going? Okay, so how can you then optimize all those sort of stages and try and understand it? I think that for me is really, really key. And it's difficult. It's not easy at all.
No.
So looking for that, and looking at those sort of deeper into the data and trying to understand that.
Yeah.
And I think often we find this things that we've spent huge amounts of time on and actually hasn't really performed how we want. And then there's that throwaway video or that throwaway article. We didn't really think about it. It didn't take very long, but actually, wow, according to those metrics and those conversions put in place, actually it's done really, really well. And they're very surprising. And so then you can learn from that. And you say, okay, so why did this one work?
Yeah.
But again, it's not just about views. I mean, I've written loads of blogs in my life that'll get you loads and loads of views, but nobody's clicking anything. It's not achieving anything. It just looks good.
Yeah.
And that's not really, really, really helpful. Fortunately, my boss, our CMO, is not taken in by those vanity metrics. If I turn to her and say, look at this blog we got loads of things, she just doesn't care because it's just what's it actually achieved. So it's good to sort of push yourself on that as well.
Yeah. 100% agree. What would you say is a typically overlooked or undervalued tool that you would recommend to content marketers, if you know of any?
I'm going to say again, folders and naming conventions.
Yeah.
Obviously, Adverity, right? I've got to have a little plug there.
I was going to say apart from Adverity, but then I thought, well, is that insulting to say it could possibly be overlooked or undervalued? Because
Oh yeah, no,
it shouldn't be.
I think, yeah. I mean, just sort of any tool that's going to help you with your data and understand it better, and not just apply Adverity. I mean, even if it's a spreadsheet, you need to be doing it and need to be looking at it. But so from the pure sort of content side, as I mentioned before, digital asset management systems, and I kind of overstate how important I think they are.
Yeah.
So just having a way of organizing all of your collateral and content, adding metadata to your content, so make it searchable within the company, but also be able to track what you've got and where your holes are. Seeing a big picture, that single source of truth of your content. And avoiding that terrible, terrible thing of having multiple versions of the same document. And yes, it drives me up the wall when people send me something and it's called version 3.1 final, and it's not final.
And there's a date on it as well.
Final version 2. Use version control on things. It's so much better than it used to be, like proper, really good version control. Make sure there's only one version of every document. You don't want to also be having to, when you create something and then you realize you've got to change something, as with a rebrand, you don't want to have to be changing it in 17 different places. It's a waste of your time. Make sure there's only one place that you have to change it and update it from. So, it's that single input, multiple output, I think people say. So those sorts of tools, and it sounds really, really boring, but it's so helpful and really, really, it's going to make your life a hell of a lot easier. And just things more streamlined, far more efficient, give you a better idea of what you're doing, and avoiding that sort of scattergun approach to things as well, and losing content, losing collaterals. Companies just like sort of, I don't know where this thing is anymore. I've lost it. It's crazy.
Yeah, I agree, and just the mistakes, mishaps, and reworks that can happen through poor version control of documents is crazy, isn't it? Someone builds an entire web page on V5 of the document and it was V6, go and rebuild the whole thing and stuff. But
And
that
everyone's looking at the
happens.
wrong, yeah, and
Yeah,
then
yeah, yeah. What version are you looking at? And no, it's really, really important stuff. I completely agree with you.
I mean, back in the day, though, that's how we had to work. You know, we didn't have sort of cloud and all that sort of stuff. I sound quite old, and no, we didn't have cloud, but we didn't, and you did have to work like that, and you had to be much more rigorous. But the tools are there now, and
They're great.
our version control now works on things like OneDrive or G Drive. They're extremely good, and
Yeah.
people need to use them more often.
Make the most of it. Yeah, absolutely. If you could create any kind of content for Adverity, so you've just been given an unlimited budget to do a billboard in Times Square or, primetime TV advertisement in the Super Bowl or something like that. What do you think would be the go-to for you in terms of a high budget, do anything to get this content in front of your audience?
I'd do another research report, but I'd have like Morgan Freeman do a sort of to it, as a video, and he'd talk everybody through it. No, I think something like that. Putting money into really exciting, sort of engaging, recorded video, but high quality sort of video content. I mean, I think it's interesting that as technology has changed, and we've companies have been able to in-house do a lot more themselves without having a big camera crew and things. You can see now we can do Zoom meetings, we do this. It's a lot more accessible. But still, there'll always be that call for that really high quality. I'd want to get James Cameron or someone in to direct a whole interview or something like that, or that would be really good fun. I think, yeah. There's some other things in there as well, a bit more realistic ones, I suppose. Is the kind of interesting technology that is now, as I say, sort of more accessible. And in the past, I worked on things for clients on augmented reality, for example. Right, that's really exciting. And I thought, when he sort of came to us and said, I thought, augmented reality, we need like an entire company just for that. It's actually much more accessible. You can work with different vendors to do that, and it was really successful and very interesting. It's not going to be relevant for a B2B SaaS company, unfortunately. Augmented reality, I don't know how that would work, but there are other things there, like gamification, for example. I think that's really sort of key and really interesting. It's something we want to look at because don't tell, show, that sort of approach. And I think gamification, things could work there really, really well and be quite exciting. As I say, it's that sort of technology is now much more accessible.
It's amazing, isn't
budgets.
it? Yeah, exactly. Without those huge, development teams and budgets, but actually like having these tools at our fingertips and just getting better year on year as well, aren't they? So
yeah. I mean, I'm a bit, I like Adobe and Creative Suite and do things like that, but you don't need to be able to. You don't have to know how that works to be able to use things. Simple systems, Canva, things like that. So it is, it's a really interesting sort of place to be. Sorry, I'm going off on a slight tangent.
No,
but I think it's shown in the way that how influencers and that career people is changed and blossomed, so it's become so big, and it's because people can do this themselves now without having to be experts in these quite complicated programs and software.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's funny, it made me laugh when you mentioned Morgan Freeman as a voiceover, because in episode 1 of this season's podcast, when I asked Jess Cook the same question, she talked about like really high production videos that they would do. And I said, would you have Morgan Freeman as the narrator of that? You've got any budget, would you get Morgan Freeman? So it's so funny how we both went
Great
to that.
line.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, he's just got a lovely voice, hasn't he?
Exactly. Why would you not want him? Talking about great minds. So on B2B Content Strategist, we love to speak with great minds, true leaders like yourself in the B2B marketing world, particularly the B2B tech marketing world. So who do you think we should talk to? So who do you see as a real leader in the B2B marketing space?
Oh, that's a tough one. I'm not sure off the top of my head, to be honest.
That's okay.
I could follow that with that afterwards. I don't want to put people on the spot. I know that
that's okay.
Question, isn't it? I could talk.
It's more of a hypothetically speaking. It's
Yeah,
not that we'll race off and invite the person on. It's more just, it's really just asking you, who are your, who do you see as really,
good content.
leaders of the, yeah, whether it's a colleague, past or present, to somebody who puts out great content on LinkedIn or something like that, but just
Yeah.
a leader in the
I'll tell you
B2B
who I'm.
space.
Okay, this isn't actually in the B2B space at all. I'm gonna hijack your question a bit because I've been watching this. This is it's not B2B, but it's really good and actually really like these guys' videos. He's CP Gray on YouTube. I suggest watching him. He's very, very
Cool.
good taking very complicated topics and he uses animations to explain very, very simply these sorts of quite complicated topics. I'm a big fan of his because I just think it's really hard to he does a lot of research into this. There's a lot of effort goes into these animations, but they're really, really great and informative videos. So for me personally, I'd like to take something like that and do that for our
Brilliant.
because we're talking about something really, really complicated as well. So you're not quite what you were asking.
No, that's awesome.
I suggest people looking up CP Gray as well, because it's if you're dealing with quite complicated subject matter, he's a really good example of somebody who can make that really accessible to people.
Yeah, awesome. We'll check them out and we'll put links to all of that in the show notes. So that's fab. That's exactly what I wanted. Like someone new and different for people to check out and have a look at. So that's great.
Yeah.
Where would you like people to go to connect with you, Tom?
Please come to our website.
Yep.
www.adverity.com. You can see our blog on there. You can also find us on Medium, find us on LinkedIn. Please leave comments. Let us know how you feel our education videos, our education series. I mentioned it before, how that's doing. Any ideas, things that you don't know about that you'd want us to be talking about more in the marketing, data and analytics world.
Cool. All right. That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on B2B Content Strategist. It's been a fab conversation. Really enjoyed it. I'm sure everyone listening in has really enjoyed it too. So yeah, thanks so much, Tom.
Well, thank you very much for having me.